We are Chad and Shelby Everett. We've been married 43 years. I was on the prowl. A friend of mine, Owen Orr, and I were kind of on the prowl, and we decided, you know, the Riverside 500's on. There's always a lot more ladies down there than there are drivers, so that's good hunting ground. So we beat it on down to the Riverside 500. And I walked into the room, and they were having the banquet meal. And I took a look up at the head table, and there was Shelby. And I was thunderstruck. I mean, it was over. I didn't want anybody else from that time on. And
it was very strange, too. I saw him walking across to sit down, and that was the last time I saw him at the banquet. But there was something in my head, too, that said, I know this person from someplace, you know?
Yeah,
it was just a strange feeling, you know?
That was the feeling. I remember Shelby had this wonderful gown on, and she's still to this day.
Oh, shush. Anyway, go ahead.
But it really showed off her
back.
Her booty. You know,
My back.
And so I would ask her to dance one dance, and I'd take her back and ask her to dance again. So I get to follow her. You know? So I get the best view in the house. Anyway, in fan magazine dumb, the studios would always put you together with somebody. So you were always, you know, the hot couple of the half year of the month or whatever.
Especially if you had a movie coming out.
Yeah. And,
then they wanted to publicize the movie. Yeah.
And basically speaking, you know, you'd spend time together, and you'd realize, you know, we're not going to spend the rest of our life together. So, but you became friends. And one of my friends from such a relationship was Chris Noel. And so I called Chris. Shelby didn't come down for the after dinner affair or whatever it was. And so I called Chris and I said, stay up, I'm coming home, I found her. And so I sat up with Chris most of the night talking about Shelby, what little I knew, you know, and what I could garner. And then the studio sent Chris and I out on that's why I had to tell you this, sent Chris and I out on a beach layout for photo play. And 20th, MGM was our studio, and 20th was Shelby's studio. She was in a contract there, sent Jody McRae and Shelby out as a couple on the beach layout. And when we got there and I saw Shelby, I said, Chris, go vamp Jody, that's her, you know. So Chris
looked like Marilyn Monroe. She was gorgeous.
Yeah, she went over and put the vamp on Jody. He never had a chance. And I got to know Shelby, and that was our first real conversation.
I kept meeting people that Chad would say, I've met the one, you know. I go to a drugstore and the guy working in the drugstore or something, and I think, this guy is really strange, you know. And we went out on a first date, and Alan Courtney, who was the head of MGM Studios, it was a big affair of some kind. He passed a note over to Chad, and I leaned over and I said, what's in the note? And he said, Alan says, have you asked her to marry you yet? If not, when? And so I thought, this guy must propose to everybody he dates. Right? So once he did propose, I thought, this guy, you know, is way out there. So, but he wasn't.
Well, I tried to build up my forces, surround you with this, this opinion, you know, that you couldn't reject, make you an offer you couldn't refuse.
No.
Sort of thing.
He sent me flowers. David Jones, florist, was kept in business by Chad for a long time.
Your whole patio was full.
And I kept all the dead flowers, all the arrangements out on my patio. And but the first flowers he sent me were on Mother's Day, and it said, in recognition of your most marvelous potential, which I thought was really neat. But Chad wrote a book of poetry for me. It's called A Toast to Shelby. and poems from, you know, all our years together. And I almost lost them in the fire when we lost our house in '71, so I put them in book form, and I have those. So first proposal, I don't remember. I mean, it wasn't down on one knee with, you know.
No, it wasn't one of those. It wasn't one of those moments. It was more like a conversation.
And we definitely had a feeling that we were meant to be together. So.
And for you know, forever. It's kind of strange. And I think about it that, that it wasn't one of those, you know, hallmark moments. But it was just like in the flow of things. You know, we knew that this was. I think we knew from the time we first laid eyes on each other that we were going to spend the rest of our lives together. So.
I used to say he proposed and then ran like hell. But we were always together. It was we didn't name a date or anything, and you know how things just progress as they go along. And I, you know, like I'm sure a lot of women have decided, you know, that the time is now or never. You know? And rightly let's get on with it, you know. Yeah. So we were engaged, but then the marriage wasn't happening and everything. And so at one point I just said goodbye, right? Mm-hmm. And I took off, and remember your dog, Gus?
Well, I mean, it was, she left, and I was lying there on my bed and just condemning myself for being 50 kinds of a fool and an idiot, and, you know, and if not in tears, near tears. And I had a half lab, half Dane named Gus. And Gus went in the closet and got one of her slippers and jumped up on the bed and went, like he did a full Lassie, right?
Hey, where's Mommy?
Go get her, idiot. So I did.
Yeah. We got married on a movie, and then we didn't have time for the honeymoon or anything.
Got married in Tucson and on a Sunday, because we wanted to get married on a Sunday. People don't do that, we found out. You get married on a Saturday, you know. So we actually had one Episcopalian minister say, I said, well, why can't you marry us on a Sunday? He said, well, maybe it's because we're to do with something more important not happening that day. And I went, oh, okay. And finally, the Chamber of Commerce, who was a devout, was an Orthodox Jew, said, you know what, find a minister, you get married in my house. He really did, you know. And we were making a picture called The Return of the Gunfighter with Robert Taylor. So we got married on a Sunday, and I went to work on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't really any time for a honeymoon. So we had not a large, a small wedding with a few friends and family.
I found a dress and just off a rack, but it was, since we were getting married in Arizona, it was sort of, then we were going to a Mexican restaurant for the fiesta, right. The whole thing. I remember I sewed pearls on this dress. I have a picture in there someplace. I lost it in the fire, but I remember the Hollywood people writing that I had this famous designer dress with the real pearls, you know, and everything. I mean, that's Hollywood for you.
She made several things that that she wore to events that were well reviewed. You know, that just.
I used to sew my own dresses for all the premieres and stuff. Sometimes in the limo going last minute, but it was fun.